Tucker, there's one thing to go off the evidence, right? And there's one thing to go and sit there and say, okay, this is all the evidence we have. None of this adds up. I've never seen anything like it. I've never heard of anything like this about someone. It sounds ludicrous to me that the guy rides up with a bicycle and look at the picture. It's just a regular rifle bag sitting there on the bicycle. Anyone who's shot a gun ever could look at that and say, well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
There's a black gun in there.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, nobody else is riding bicycles around here with backpacks, flying a drone with a rangefinder. It's like, what else did this guy need? A big sign that says, I am the sniper and pointing it down at him.
Welcome back to the channel. What a weekend. A lot to cover. A lot's happened. But we wanted to touch on this clip today. It's Tucker Carlson and Jack Posobiec discussing a few things, but mainly want to cover the shooting and some information that we found more helpful and interesting than what we watched today with the Oversight Committee hearing. So where they were questioning Director Cheadle. Anyway, so we wanted to it's gonna be a longer video because there's just a lot to cover, but it's really interesting and they cover a lot and it's very informative.
A lot of information that I haven't heard before.
It was just really interesting. So here we go.
Let's get this going.
But as of this morning, tell us what happened that day.
So I've got here Senator Johnson's office. Ron Johnson of Wisconsin has been kind enough to send us a preliminary copy of their reporting into the situation. Very fresh, fog of war, caveat right. On all this stuff.
Yes.
Because this is what's coming from them. We are told
and can I say one thing? I think whatever you think of, I like Ron Johnson, but even if I didn't, he clearly has a willingness to pull threads in a way most senators are not. And he's obviously got some decent investigators on his staff, given what he did with COVID. So
I think he's someone who wants the truth of things.
It does feel that way to me.
And that he with a burning desire. By the way, there are two senators of Pennsylvania. I don't see them.
No, they're not
doing any of
this. But Johnson has people on his, I don't know who they are, but he came up with stuff during COVID that nobody else got. So
right.
I think that we should consider what you're about to say in light of that.
All right, and these are predominantly interviews that were conducted through the local police, and that just right off the start should tell you something. Because if Johnson's talking to local police, wait a minute, this is the United States senator. Shouldn't he have direct access to the Secret Service? Shouldn't he have direct access to the ATF, to the FBI, all of these things? And so as his office has been going through the investigation, they suddenly said, well, yeah, we talked to one guy from the ATF who was sort of there, but then he went dark on us. And we talked to a few people at the Secret Service and they push us to the spokesman, like you're some reporter. We talked to a few people at FBI, but nothing. And then so local police is saying, whoa, wait a minute, we'll tell you whatever you want to know. So why is it that local police are being more forthcoming than our actual government?
Well, this is why they defunded the police in the first place. It's not because they're against police. They seek a police state. They're against anybody with guns they can't control. That's why they're trying to take your AR. I mean, that's the way to understand
the goal
it.
of defund the police is a national police force,
of course.
Eventually.
Yeah, guys with guns they can control.
And Sharpton has come out and said this.
Obviously. It's so obviously true. Anyway, I keep interrupting you.
So, number one top line, Secret Service did not attend a security briefing that morning.
The morning of the event.
The morning of the event. So, and we can drop back and just explain the whole thing. Donald Trump is having a political rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. This is Western Pennsylvania, about 40 miles north or so of the city of Pittsburgh. On the same day, same evening, Jill Biden, the First Lady of the United States, is holding a dinner event in Pittsburgh. The context of all this is that the RNC is taking place 2 days in advance of it. And so the RNC is taking place. Jill Biden's got the event. Donald Trump is at the event, both in the same Secret Service field office area. Now, there's also a lot of Secret Service down in Milwaukee, where you and I were, at the RNC. So Secret Service is totally stretched at this point. It's not like a normal situation. The security posture, because of this, because of the lack of resources, is much lower. The normal people who would be around President Trump aren't there. His A team, as they're called, aren't necessarily there as much. People are spread to all these different locations.
Okay, pause. Yeah.
So, like Kristen said earlier, we watched the hearing, the oversight hearing today. We didn't get much out of it.
No. She was very uncooperative.
Director, what's her name?
Cheadle.
Cheadle was asked this same question, whether or not it was Trump's
same detail.
Normal detail.
She said yes.
She said yes.
Yep, she sure did.
So the investigation that Ron Johnson from Wisconsin,
say that 10 times fast,
from Wisconsin, senator, his investigation showed that it was not.
So something that she said, though, because she was asked a couple different times, but anyway, was that it's the same, I guess it's a large amount, and they have shifts. So it's the same, but I'm like, I don't know. I still, because it was brought to the attention that clearly it was different security detail at the RNC than it was at the Pennsylvania rally. So anyway, but that was her.
Namely,
the
women that were part of the team that if you've watched the video of the shooting and when they escorted President Trump out, you could see there was 3 women. One of them clearly had an issue with holstering her.
She was
pistol.
rattled.
She was
rattled. I think it freaked her out, and I think she just couldn't handle
the pressure in the situation.
Absolutely. Yep. Yes.
Okay. So let's
keep going.
This is the context. We also know that there was a strong theory that President Trump would bring his vice presidential pick to that rally. And certainly this was in discussion, held right on the border of where? Ohio. President Trump that morning, we now know, had a meeting with Senator J.D. Vance, who went on to become the nominee, although that pick was not made until Monday. So J.D. Vance doesn't end up.
Well, I happen to know that was the plan, or one of several plans that was under discussion. That's a fact.
Yes.
And I heard it from like a bunch of different people. I heard it from the campaign. So this was known.
Right. I'm hearing the exact same thing, that, and partially the forcing function for that is because the vice presidential nominee must be named on the first day of the convention. Right. And so the idea is, well, why not just bring him to a rally and do it there and have it be? And I haven't quite have you heard why it was that they decided not to bring him?
Yeah, I have. And I think it was just a political question. Where are we going to get more bang for this announcement?
Okay.
But I do know that as of, a few days before, that was actively being discussed. It's a long way of saying what you just said, which is that people watching this had every reason to believe that Trump and his VP pick would be there.
So you see, and of course, Rubio had just been at an event in Trump Doral, I think a few days before, and he was someone who was also very heavily lobbied. We can talk about that later, but heavily lobbied as vice president from a number of people around that same time period. But he had been at a rally in Doral, and yet Trump did not bring him on stage. So a lot of people thought that was sort of the death knell for that potential candidacy. So Trump is holding this rally, and about 10 minutes into the start of the rally.
Wait, first though, the Secret Service didn't even show up at the morning briefing the day of the rally?
Yeah. Right here. Secret Service did not attend a security briefing provided to local special weapons and tactics, SWAT, and sniper teams the morning of July 13th. So when you're holding an event like this, going back to security posture, typically you're going to need to staff up. So you're going to need extra bodies, you're going to need augments, you're going to need more CS, counter sniper teams, you're going to need all of these things, because a huge event, outdoor event since November 1963 has always been and will always be the most potentially fatal event that a politician can hold, of course. And so they know that for one of these outdoor events, the first thing you have to worry about is all the tall buildings, all the tall implements. This is why they're held in fields, by the way, for the most part, rather than like inner cities, because cities would have more vantage points. You've got windows, you got all sorts of stuff. Dealey Plaza.
Makes sense.
We can all do the math on this. And so they bring in augments from state police. They bring in augments from the local Butler County Sheriff. They bring augments from the Butler Township Police, and to say, okay, you're going to be working with us. No, every single presidential event is controlled by the Secret Service. And this woman, Kimberly Cheadle, speaking of female leadership, it tells us that, well, these areas were assigned to the local police, and that's just not true. They may have been in areas that were considered outside the perimeter, but the Secret Service has command of every single hierarchy for a presidential visit, period, full stop. So anyone who's brought into this is working through their operational plan. So the CONOP is done, concept of operations would be done by the Secret Service and then disseminated to these teams. However, we're told that at the basic sync meeting that you would have been having that morning, Secret Service wasn't even there. So the local police say, okay, morning of, let's go. It's the, like the coach meeting the team before
the
the
Secret
game.
Service is responsible for protecting Trump.
Yes.
But they couldn't even go to the meeting that morning. So let me ask you a question.
And this is the meeting
that's
where
bizarre,
where
right?
you're
Very
going
bizarre.
through what frequency are we on, guys? Hey, I'm Jack. Here's Tucker. We're going to be out there. Okay, you got the building. We're going to be in here. So you would be able to communicate. You'd go through a communications plan. You'd go through the basic workflow of the day. You'd go through your pattern of life.
Yeah.
You would mention if you, I don't know, saw someone flying a drone around or something like that. That type of information could be disseminated. Or if there were any local groups that they had an eye on, you might put out a 6-pack or something like that. Hey, be advised, these are some of the things that we're tracking. These are some of the people that we're looking at. If you had something like that, this is the meeting where you would do that. Secret Service doesn't go.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then what happens?
So local law enforcement was siloed, no direct radio contact because they didn't go to the meeting. They had no way of contacting directly to the Secret Service snipers who were inside. So you've got these police teams outside.
Even during the event, they had no way to contact them?
They had to contact them through an intermediary. So you'd set up a tactical operations center or a communication. I think it was called the Butler Communication Center in this case, or the TOC. So you'd go through the TOC, and then the TOC has a liaison, and the liaison goes to the Secret Service, and then the Secret Service has to go through their liaison back to the TOC, and then the TOC goes back to the police, as opposed to just being on the same frequency and saying, hey, there's a guy crawling on the building.
So who was this guy, and how did he get there? What do we know about him?
This individual, and I want to skip ahead a little bit in the report because there's a lot in this report. Even, by the way, let me say this real quick. Section 5, Secret Service was initially not going to send snipers to the rally, according to local law enforcement.
What? Okay. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is crazy.
I'm actually surprised that the local law enforcement, but I would imagine that they are equally as irritated, infuriated, or whatever, frustrated. For them to show up, Secret Service doesn't show up to the meeting, and then makes it very hard to communicate, which makes it really hard to do your job. For no reason. I mean, well, unless there was a reason, which is so sinister to think about. But where else is your head going to go? I mean, it's like you don't really know what else to think at this point.
Yeah.
But it is really nice to know that they are being cooperative. Like, hey, this is what we heard. We heard that they weren't even going to have snipers at the rally. What?
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's insane.
That's crazy.
So we'll skip ahead here through
get through Tucker's commercial.
There we go.
How does that even happen?
An outdoor rally with a guy who's a former president of the United States, who is imminently becoming the nominee for president of the United States, someone who we just know, it's just inherent that Donald Trump has multiple credible threats to his life at all times for like the last decade or so. And they weren't even going to provide counter sniper teams at first to this rally, which, as I just said, is outdoors, which is the most potentially fatal, the most dangerous position a politician can ever put themselves in. We're told the counter sniper team showed up like the day before to actually do some of the casing, not a week prior. And I've done presidential visits, I've done overseas stuff with presidents and detailees, and you're out there a week before, you're going through the motorcade route, you're checking bridges, you're doing all that stuff. None of that was done here. None of it. 8 days before the rally, local police are informed. 5 days before the rally, they meet with the Secret Service and they're informed that the rally will be held at the Butler Farm Grounds. 3 days before the rally, Secret Service conducts a site visit. Just 3 days before they conducted the site visit. At that point, no counter sniper teams. On the day of the rally, 9 a.m., they hold the briefing. 46-page slide deck only from the local Butler ESU. Local SWAT and sniper units are there, but the staging locations are laid out. Secret Service doesn't attend. According to attendees of the briefing, no Secret Service or other federal law enforcement is present for this briefing. Secret Service had not initially intended to provide sniper units, but changed course for currently unclear reasons. The briefing included an outline of the security perimeter for the event and areas of responsibility, or AORs. At 9:27 a.m., concurrent, Thomas Matthew Crooks, the alleged shooter, enters a Home Depot located in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. CCTV footage shows the shooter entering alone. A couple of minutes later, he purchases a 5-foot aluminum dual platform ladder. That's the only time we see the ladder, by the way, Tucker, in this timeline. The ladder disappears after this. 9:42, he leaves. They identify him. 10:30, snipers are in position. And this is interesting.
Can I just ask? So that morning, Crooks buys the ladder.
Yes.
So that suggests he's already figured out exactly what he's going to do.
He's got an idea.
Interesting. Okay.
So the ladder's in place. 10:30 a.m., 2 local law enforcement snipers are in position on the second floor inside the AGR building, the American Glass Research Building. So they don't go to the roof of this building. They go inside the second floor. They sit there. They're looking out the windows, but they never actually go to the roof or apparently to the back of the building to see where this guy came up. 5:10 p.m., Crooks is first observed by one of the snipers, AGR Sniper 1, at the AGR building.
Crazy.
And he takes the picture below of Crooks. Not long after that, and I'll show you these in a second, they can put up, AGR Sniper 1 takes a picture below of a bicycle and what appears to be 2 bags located near the AGR building. It is unclear what happened to the bicycle and bags after July 13th, 2024. And take a look at that.
Wow.
So
the bicycle disappeared?
they're saying that Crooks rode a bicycle to the event?
That's insane.
There's a van that's later found
That's right.
outside the event in sort of the parking area that's about a mile distance from this AGR building. That is Crooks's van. That van is, we're told, contains explosives, homemade explosives, and explosives that are connected to a remote control detonator, which is later found on Crooks's body. So the idea being then, if this bicycle is indeed his, parks the van, gets into the bicycle, carries his rifle, slings it on, you could see the bags in the photo, rides the bicycle from where the van is, that mile distance, to the back of this building.
Okay, so
That's
then
a
I'm
lot of
getting to the
planning.
next part. I'm sorry to take this from
And
you.
actually, I'm just realizing that I don't believe in the senator's timeline that they have the drone.
What drone?
Crooks's drone. Unless I'm missing it.
He has a drone too?
It's now been reported that he, at some point prior to 5:10, so around 3 in the afternoon or so, when things are still getting prepared, he's there with a drone flying a flight pattern around the area of the Butler farm grounds.
On the day of the rally?
On the day, the morning of.
The morning?
You
No, the
can't. I mean, I
afternoon.
just
He
know
said
from
3
living in
p.m.
DC, you can't just operate drones around law enforcement. It freaks them out.
Yeah.
No,
Just
or Don Jr. told me, and I think he said in one of his recent interviews, that when his father was at his house for like an event, like a family event and a party, that he wanted to put up one of his drones, and the software wouldn't allow the drone to even take off because a Secret Service detailee was in the vicinity. My cousin was getting married in southern Pennsylvania, which is pretty close to where Wilmington is, and she wanted to have a drone up at her wedding. And because Biden happened to be in Wilmington at that point, she's within that 30-mile radius. You know, the photographers come to her and say, "Hey, we can't do any drones here."
This is crazy, and it's also sophisticated.
So
I think there's ways around that.
yeah,
You know more about this than not because
I've had drones, used drones and all.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of true and kind of not true about not being able to. All the newer drones with the newer updates will keep you from lifting off. Older drones, if you haven't updated them, you can actually take off in places you're not supposed to. Normally they'll give you a warning saying, "Hey, this is an unauthorized area. You're not allowed to fly. Proceed at your own caution." And you just hit yes and then keep going. But you know, he could have had an older drone that was not updated, or I think they talk about him being into computers, computer programming and stuff like that. He probably could have hacked into it and changed that. But that's pretty interesting that he cased the area with the drone before. This is not the first time I've heard about the drone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is definitely, it just shows that this was something that was planned out.
Mm-hmm.
and which is really strange because they didn't announce the rally until like 3 days before. So I don't know. It's all very interesting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we'll
it
keep
is.
going here.
So the guy's got, it seems like he's got a van, explosives, a bicycle, a rifle,
A drone,
a ladder, a drone,
a rangefinder.
a rangefinder. I'm going to ask you about that in a second. And the guy knew this was coming. This wasn't a spur of the moment thing. He's buying the ladder that morning. And he's making a shot that everyone is sort of, I know everyone's like, oh, it's not 140 yards, not that far. I think it was 140 yards.
It's a boot camp shot.
Yeah, boot camp shot. Still, I don't know. I fired that rifle yesterday. You kind of have to.
With no scope.
He had no scope?
No scope, iron rails.
Are you sure?
Yes.
He used iron sights to hit someone
He used iron sights.
in the face at 140 yards.
I was
my
wondering,
take on
I was
that, and
wondering about
just
that,
my
about the
assessment
scope.
was that he knew that because he was lying prone, he knew that a scope or an EOTech or something would present more of a picture to any counter snipers. So if you wanted to stay lower, if you wanted to stay more out of sight, and he's using the angle of the building to conceal himself, that you wouldn't want something. That
Okay,
was
I'm
really
calling
sticking
bullshit
up.
on this whole thing. I'm trying not to use swear words. Excuse me. This is not
is
plausible.
crazy.
This kid's a 20-year-old, much bullied, socially awkward, weird kid who washes out of the rifle team because he can't shoot. He's got no social media profile. His search history suggests no research into any of this, and he sounds way too sophisticated.
And what the videos that they're not talking about are the fact that he appears in this like BlackRock ad, and as well as a number of YouTube videos regarding computer programming that he was in the previous.
Okay, so I know that all of your former military, I wasn't even in the Boy Scouts, but I shoot a lot. I have all my life, and I just disagree with respect with all the former special forces and CIA guys and guys like you. I think 140 yards with iron sights hitting a man in the face, pretty good shot. I'm just saying that. I do. No one else agrees with a boot camp shot, but this guy didn't go to boot camp. And as someone who also didn't go to boot camp, but shoots a lot, 223, a lot, including yesterday, I think it's a decent shot. I do. It's hitting steel the size of a tea saucer at 140 yards with iron sights. Like, that's not, I mean, I could probably do that, but again, I shoot a lot.
Well, and Tucker, there's another piece.
But for a guy who's 20 years old, like, how much range time do you have? Like,
So
where did he learn that?
There is some reporting. So this was his father's gun.
Yeah.
And so after flying the drone, he drives all the way back to Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, which is a distance of about an hour, both ways. So he drives an hour back, says, hey, Dad, I'm going to take the gun out. And the dad later tells media, at least as of right now, and caveat to all this stuff, because we're going off of what we have right now, that the dad says, I thought he was going to the range. So this sounded like that was a regular thing that he did.
Okay. Then that's, I mean, it's not a crazy long shot, but it's just, but you kind of have to commit a little bit to learning how to operate the rifle if you're going to hit it 140.
Listen to this part, because if you want to talk about the shot. So a lot of people think that, he was just sitting there prone, waiting for the opportune moment. Trump happens to turn at the last moment. That's it. That's not what happened. What happened was a couple of these local police officers, and we've gone through the timeline where they take the picture of him, they're radioing the messages back, and Trump's team, the actual team around Donald Trump, doesn't get any of these messages, because the easiest thing to do would be to say, hey, let's check that guy out before we bring the president out on stage. They never relay the message to Trump. They never give that to his team, his direct body detail. They never hear about this guy. No. So there's a threat. There's a threat that's identified an hour prior.
Yeah.
They're taking photos of him. They're checking on him. They lose sight of him. That's when he goes up on the building, we're told. And they're calling in saying, hey, there's a guy. He's got a rangefinder.
Okay, so that's what I want to ask you. So will you explain for people who aren't familiar with the device, what's a rangefinder?
So a rangefinder is something that somebody might use in site surveying. Someone might use in laying out a plot of land, or nice barn like this one or something like that.
And in deer hunting.
In hunting,
yeah.
And of course in a sniper team, a rangefinder is used by the spotter so sniper teams are always called that because you've got a spotter and a shooter.
Right.
So the spotter is the person who's doing the range finding. They might be calculating wind. They might be.
It shows
using
you the
binoculars.
distance.
It gives you the distance
away from something you're looking
from
at.
whatever it is. Right. So you're painting it with a laser, and you're saying.
So if
this is how far away
you're trying to protect, the most controversial political figure in the world at an outdoor rally, and someone shows up with a rangefinder, like you can't even bring at the RNC. You couldn't even bring your Juul, and you couldn't even.
You couldn't have a vape in there. Yeah.
Right, because it might increase your testosterone, and that's a threat. But how do you get a rangefinder into a protected event? That's like the craziest thing I've ever heard.
So he never goes in through the magnetometers, as far as there was reporting early on that the rangefinder was found in the magnetometers, but the current reporting, caveat, is that he always stayed outside the effective Secret Service perimeter, that there's this whole range of fencing. By the way, for the record, I'm not saying anything about what I think right now. This is the official story. Right. So there's this whole setup off to the side of where Trump is standing, where there's a fence and there's nothing. There's no Secret Service. There's a couple of patrols. There's these guys in the building. Anybody could have walked up with anything.
How does the kid know where that unprotected area is?
So he's casing the area. He's going there prior. He's flying the drone. He's checking it all out. But for whatever reason, he just knows to ride the bike directly there, and then he's going to have a direct shot from the top of the roof.
This kid doesn't have a job. I mean, he's 20 years old.
He works in a nursing home.
I'm sorry. That's right. I read that.
Well, very, very tactically.
No, but that's right.
Job.
He's changing bedpans by day, but he somehow is able to assess exactly the place that's got the height advantage, this building.
I was just going to reiterate. So that was something that they talked about today at the Oversight Committee hearing, was that they were talking about where the perimeter was, where, among other things, like why wasn't there someone on that building?
Right.
And anyway, but that was something that someone did ask. So if it's not, because the building was outside of that perimeter.
Right.
And so the question was, if it's outside of that perimeter, is that they're not like monitoring that area?
I think that's where the lapse was, because I think in here, what he did say, there was Secret Service snipers in the same building on the second floor.
Right. I think that's how they took that picture. Or was that the local police that took that picture?
That was the local police that took the picture.
Okay.
There's another clip, and I wish I had it pulled up, of one of the another senator. The group of them went out there, surveyed the area, and they went on the roof. And while he was talking, he was filming himself while he was talking, and he turned and looked. He was standing where the shooter was. The building behind him was the 2-story part. He was actually on the 1-story roof. The 2-story building was behind him, and then there was windows right behind him. And so he was asking, is this where the Secret Service was? And if so, how did they not see this shooter in the window right in front of him? And
like if they're standing in the window,
right,
looking out the window, they're a direct
view of the shooter,
the roof, and where the shooter was.
One of the senators,
that's crazy.
One of the members of the Oversight Committee asked the director, Chittle, whatever her name is, Cheadle, if there was someone on the second floor, and she wouldn't answer. She refused to answer that question.
And then they were saying too, like, if there was someone on the roof, why couldn't they hear him walking around on the roof? Exactly. It's a metal building.
Exactly.
Anyway, so many weird, doesn't add up. But anyway, we'll keep going.
And that is unprotected. Like, how would he know? I mean, the luck involved is extraordinary.
It's more than just this luck, because we're also told, and again, this timeline doesn't quite have it, that at one point the local police, the Butler police, do go out, and they send a couple of units to go, a couple of guys over to go and say, hey, we think there's someone on that roof. We're not sure why the sniper team inside the building doesn't just go and check the roof of their own building, but some guys who are on the ground, one officer hoists the other officer on his shoulders, so he can, it's not that high of a building, to say, hey, take a look up there. And they couldn't find any ladder from their vantage point. They go up there, officer sees Crooks turns, trains the rifle directly at the officer ducks down, and we're told that, again, based off of this officer's reporting, that at that moment, Crooks swings the rifle back around and begins firing at Trump.
That is
So this wasn't a situation where he was sitting there lying in wait, totally unintercepted, and fires the shots. We're told that those shots ring out within seconds of him switching his sight picture back and forth from the officer back to Trump.
So I think, again, as a non-expert, but a lifelong shooter, I think that's a pretty adult shot. Like do you? I mean, you're in the military.
Being able to switch the sight picture that far at that range, maintain your cool, and still get off a shot which has a little bit of connection to the ear that's a fantastic shot.
Oh, it is, right? Okay, good. I'm glad someone said.
Yeah. So
that's insane.
My first thought is 140 yards, even open sights. That's not that tough a shot. I could do that shot. But what makes it hard to me is what he just said. Him moving, turning around, and then start shooting. And what makes it a little bit tougher is it's not like you're shooting downrange at a target, at a white target with a different colored background. You're shooting at a target that's wearing a red hat,
and everybody's
wearing a suit, a red hat, and there's all this red and blue, and everyone's wearing red hats. How he was
and
moving, somewhat, but he's still moving. But if this is true, he turns and acquires Trump as a target that quick and starts shooting, and was able to get off a lucky shot to hit Trump. That is something.
And can we also just think about, or recognize the fact that the cop? So is that the part when he was talking about the cop climbed up, and the kid's immediate reaction was to literally point the rifle at the cop?
Yeah.
Not to, oh shit.
Right.
It wasn't like crap.
He automatically turns on turns
that's
on the
his
cop.
Instinct to turn and point the weapon at the police officer.
Yeah. So he turns.
That's what you're
dealing
with.
He turns and
marks the mindset.
Yeah. He turns and marks the cop, and then immediately turns back in.
I just had to say that.
If this is true, if this is what really happened.
That's true.
Yeah.
Everyone on television's like been in, Delta Force or something, and they're all crazy accomplished shooters. But for a non-veteran with no law enforcement background to make a shot like that strikes me as
although I would say
amazing.
The one thing that I would just add though is that in the military, and I wasn't like some sniper or anything, but very basic level of training, and some mountain training and stuff like that you're not trained to go for headshots. You're trained to aim center mass.
That's right. Of course.
And that's any basic firearms course is going to train you center mass. Why? Because the heads turn.
Yeah.
So the head turns, the head moves around. That being said,
it's a smaller target.
It's a smaller target, center mass. You've got your central nervous system. So you've got the brain stem, you've got your spinal column, you've got lungs, you've got heart, you've got all sorts of important real estate right here. So as long as you're somewhere along that parallel axis, you're gonna more than likely hit something. And you've got more of a sight picture. So you've got target-rich environment if you're going for center mass. And to this point, I have not seen reporting on whether or not Trump was actually wearing a bulletproof vest that day. I don't think he was.
He was not shot in the chest, by the way. There was early speculation that he was. I asked him directly. He said he wasn't.
Well, and that was something with Reagan, too, because Reagan does get hit. And at first they thought it wasn't that bad, but later it turned out there was internal bleeding and there was just other stuff that was going on.
So how, from the video we have all seen, the counter sniper, Secret Service counter sniper is lying prone, and he clearly has the shooter in his glasses. He's looking at him. He does not shoot the sniper until after the sniper has shot Trump. How could a Secret Service counter sniper look at a man with a rifle 140 yards away and not shoot him? I don't understand that.
So two schools of thought. One option is he thought it was a police officer. Because remember, the local police are supposed to have control of this building. and they don't have any communications with local police. And there have been so many times, Tucker, at events where someone from one agency, because they're dealing with these augments, they're dealing with people from, and there's a ton of HSI from Homeland Security that are there. There's a ton of these other local agents. You've got multiple agencies going around, which even worse at the RNC, but I think there was like 130 different agencies that were at the RNC represented. So if you don't have good communications because you didn't go to the meeting, then you have no way of knowing, hey guys, do you have someone on that building or not? Because I see someone with a rifle, doesn't look like a police officer, and he's aiming his rifle at the president. Yeah, so the question, Tucker, though, is if you know that at that point, why isn't your first call to your detail sitting right with the president and say, hold him? Don't let him go on that stage.
There's a guy with a rifle pointed at the stage. Yeah, I think.
Which, by the way, I mean, we've all been at Trump events or whatever politician events where they show up a couple of minutes late. Like it's never been everybody's taking pictures. They're talking to somebody, whatever.
So who are these? I mean, have we heard from the counter sniper team?
From the Secret Service?
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah, that's really, really wild.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, it is. That's pretty crazy.
So was Senator Johnson able to interview them?
No.
Mm-mm.
It's all been Kimberly Cheadle, go to the spokesman. I'm looking through the report again here to see if anything, there's lots of questions, lots of outstanding questions that the senator's written here.
Oh, so this is, but if I can just say, this is the point where the Secret Service is incumbent on them to prove that they didn't allow this kid to shoot Trump, because it certainly looks like they did allow it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't understand why there isn't a delegation of senators and members of Congress and citizens standing outside blocking the entrance to the Secret Service headquarters to answer the question. You are, I think, based on everything you've said, they are presumed guilty. Now, they may not be guilty, but they have an obligation to explain how they're not guilty. And no one is forcing that explanation. Like, what is going on?
Well, they had to subpoena her just to show up.
So, Tucker, here's an interesting thing when you look at government.
Conquer.
So in criminal justice, you have the presumption of innocence. So the government has the presumption. The evidence must be on their side. So they have to bring the evidence. The burden of proof is on the government because the government is bringing the accusations. I say when it's the government, it's the opposite. I would say the burden of innocence is on the citizens and the burden of guilt is on the government.
It's certainly what this fact set. Common sense suggests like this is screw up after screw up after screw up, which put together suggest an intentional series of screw ups, which would have allowed Trump to be murdered, and whatever else would happen after that. So like the fact that they haven't explained themselves and haven't been forced to explain them, and I mean forced to explain themselves, tells you that things are totally out of control.
So
Absolutely.
As we record,
like they can do anything and nobody can do anything about it.
So as we're recording this, Kimberly Cheadle is supposedly testifying in front of Comers right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that being said, well, caveat, there might be something that comes out of that. The House has started to look into this, but I think without question, and something that Speaker Johnson has spoken of, which I certainly agree with, is that this needs to be investigated.
You can't murder people.
The House needs to set up a commission that's 10 times bigger than whatever the J6 commission was.
You think?
And we need to get absolutely to the bottom of any of this, because when you talk about crooks, we can talk about crooks for a little bit.
Yeah, and I keep
this guy
wrecking the flow of your story here.
They say that this guy was a total ghost on social media. He's not a ghost on social media when he's 20 years old. That means he's making himself a ghost. That means he's got programming knowledge. He knows how to use encrypted accounts. No, he knows how to hide what he's doing online. 100%. He knows how to use VPNs. He knows how to use Tor. He knows all of that stuff, Tor browser. And so he's able to mask what he's doing online.
Absolutely.
Now, and again, all hypothetical, but the question is, how did he know all of this information? How did he know this? Did he know that there would be a low security posture at this event? Did he know that the Secret Service would be split between multiple events? I don't think anyone was really tracking that from the outside, that, hey, Jill Biden's got an event here and Donald Trump's got an event here and the RNC is right here. So Secret Service doesn't have...
What's his... but I missed the most obvious question, which is, what's the kid's motive?
Well, Tucker, it's one of those great times where the government is telling us authorities are baffled as to what the motive might be.
Well, I thought they were telling us that Iran did it or Assad did it.
Within a few
He was going to
days,
gas Trump with his poison gas reserves.
within a few days
Crystal's
after,
always
we get
claiming
this
he's
we get
God.
this story about right, gas his own people.
It was
when
Iran.
when he's winning the war.
Iran did it. Okay.
And so we're told it was Iran. But that being said, the Iranian, that stuff goes back to Soleimani. That stuff is like some old, we're going to get you back.
It's also clearly manipulative.
From this. And it's interesting that the first country that we get told may have had a role in this is exactly the same country that the Leviathan and the oligarchs and the neocons want to go to war with.
Obviously. No, it's also...
Yeah.
I call BS on that.
Yeah, that's BS.
That only makes them look more implicated,
right.
in my opinion. I think it's more, I think you just want to be the hero. I think I could be wrong, of course, but I think that this kid was troubled. I think that he believed the propaganda about Trump. It's like if you look back at all of the propaganda being pushed to hate Trump, even back to when he was president, even back to when he was running for president, and they have just nonstop hate of Trump.
Trump is the devil.
Yes.
Trump's evil.
And Trump supporters are. So why wouldn't you come to a rally full of Trump supporters?
Yeah.
And where Trump is, and what happens.
There's been so much rhetoric about how evil, how bad, how the world's going to end because of Trump. And
how he hates democracy. That's just going to be the end of democracy. Yep. And how
all it takes is someone who is already not mentally stable to hear this over and over and over and over again.
I don't know.
To set someone off.
That, and you have to think too, was this person, did he kind of live an isolated life? Was he not outgoing? Did he not have, was he not, was he just like, he worked at a nursing home as a 20-year-old young man? That's not a very fun job. Sounds to me like, and then his extracurriculars were going to the range. He's making bombs.
Evidently he's spending a lot of time
on the computer.
Online.
He, there's no telling all the stuff I'm just saying, if you put all this together, it sounds like a crazy movie, honestly, and it might end up being one. But I could see how there's he probably didn't have a lot of interaction with others other than online.
Right. He's probably, if he's going on these sites to learn how to make bombs, there's no telling who he's talking to.
Yeah, and he was a gamer too.
He was a gamer. Did someone reach out to him and kind of egg him along? He had to learn how to make these bombs somewhere.
That's right.
So, did he learn it on his own? Did someone help coach him?
Hero, vigilante. He's going to take out Trump and save the country or whatever in his brain. Who knows? I'm just saying, like, for them to say what the motive is, I just feel like you could go anywhere with that.
We don't fully know about the van.
Total
about
speculation
the bomb.
Here, but just
I did hear about that, but I've heard anywhere from the van was 10 miles away to 1 mile away. So nothing else has been said about the van. So we don't know. We don't know if that was true, or that was just hearsay.
He did have the detonator on him.
Well, that's true. They did say that he did have some kind of a detonator.
And that there were bombs found near a gas line on the property, is what I had heard.
They found explosive at his house.
Oh, I thought. Okay.
So, yeah, they found explosives supposedly in the van that was a mile away. That may have been parked near some gas lines. But they did find.
It doesn't make any sense why he would blow up his house.
No. Well, he had been making, but you don't know what he was thinking. He may have thought that he could pull this off and get on, his bicycle or whatever and blend in. We don't know what happened to the bicycle, what was in the bags, if he had changes of clothes or what.
Someone took it. Someone snatched it up.
It's gone, or it was hidden somewhere and they just haven't found it yet.
They have a picture of it.
Yeah, but they said it disappeared.
Yeah, it disappeared.
I haven't seen it since. So
anyway,
I don't know. But this is a really good interview. I know we just played a short clip of it. If you want to see the whole thing, it's like 2 hours long. Just go on to Tucker's show and watch it. But it's pretty good. There's a lot of information that we haven't heard before. but we just wanted to. We were very interested in this one section of it, so we wanted to play it, and we had a few comments about it.
Mm-hmm. We just thought it was really interesting. So we're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
It's a long one. So we appreciate you sticking with us to watch the whole thing. And like we said, we'll post a link in the description for the entire interview if you wanted to watch all of it, because they do discuss other things too. But we appreciate you watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. Please comment if you are familiar with any of this, if you know much about the Secret Service, if you know much about how, if this sounds, like, what, whatever you think, because I don't know. I'm learning, and it is interesting hearing other people's take on it. And we've watched a couple of other people, and like Dan Bongino, and
there's so much
he's talked
information
about
out
it,
there. You
stuff
got to
like
kind
that.
of comb through it. Some of it is, far out there.
Mhm. It's just opinions too.
Will we ever really know? We don't know.
It's very true.
But you kind of have to piece things together on your own sometimes.
But anyway, thank you so much for watching.
Yep. Thank you. Until the next time.